Good morning. It is an honor for me to talk before career executive service officers of our government. My topic is leadership skills for a future-ready and resilient learning organization. And the way I will organize my talk is via the 5 disciplines of a learning organization. So let us start with the first discipline. According to Peter Singh, who is the acknowledged guru of organizational learning, the first skill, the first discipline of a learning organization is managing your mental models. In other words, the skill of managing your assumptions. Peter Singh, about 3 decades ago, wrote a best-selling book. It's called Fifth Discipline. And this triggered a new specialization on learning organizations. Okay, discipline number 1 is about awareness of your assumptions, especially your hidden and limiting assumptions. It means willingness to revisit, test or validate, and even revise those assumptions. You know, in business, this is a serious thing because disruptive innovation starts with a completely new and better business model. In other words, a completely different set of business assumptions. Here are some examples. Encyclopedia Britannica closed down. It was disrupted by Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a kind of project based completely on different assumptions. Practically zero cost, widely accessible, crowdsourced. About 3 decades ago or 4 decades ago, Japanese digital watches almost wiped out the Swiss watch industry, except Swatch, because Swatch changed its business model. They changed their business assumptions. It is now based on what they say, quote unquote, we are selling fashion and distinction. We are not selling timepieces. Another example, closer to home, Don Bosco College of Engineering and Information Technology, about 15 years ago, they were on the red. They were losing money for 3 years. And they know they may close down the school. They have to start doing something new or they have to stop doing something. You know what? They survived. After they changed their business assumptions, they shifted from boys only to co-ed. And so they were back on the block the next June. Okay, there are other lines of evidence supporting the first discipline of Peter Singh. There are so many research around the world showing that EQ correlates better with work performance than IQ. You know, emotional intelligence, according to the experts, has 5 domains. And the first domain, the doorway to emotional intelligence, is awareness of your own feelings and emotions. In order to have empathy, in order to know the feelings of other people, you have to know your own feelings. In order to manage your emotions, you have to first be aware of them. You know, a managed principle is you cannot manage something that you are not aware of or that you are not observing. So this is an early 1990 book on emotional intelligence. A later study on emotional intelligence, 2017, says the same thing. The first competency in emotional intelligence is emotional self-awareness. You have to master this first before you can master self-management, including emotional self-control. You cannot manage your emotions unless you are first watching it or observing it. And I will give an example later. Here is another line of evidence. Do you know what is the most important leadership skill according to world leaders? Well, this article from Harvard Business Review answered that question. What they did was they interviewed 75 members of the Stanford Graduate School of Business Advisory Council. The Advisory Council consists of world leaders, not only in the US, not only in business, it's also in government, in NGO, in other countries, and so on. And what they did, they interviewed these world leaders. They asked them, what is the most important leadership skill? And I was so surprised and happy to learn that according to this article, the 75 members of the Advisory Council were almost unanimous that the most important capability or skill for leaders to develop is self-awareness. It supports the first discipline of Peter Singer. Finally, let me give you a little bit more traditional example. You know, the Japanese, they have a tradition. According to them, the emperor must have 3 qualities, symbolized by, first, the sword. The sword symbolizes political power, physical power, military power, and the valor associated with power, political power. The second symbol is the jewel, which stands for benevolence coming from having wealth, having money, having resources. But the third symbol is the most important. According to the Japanese, the most important symbol is the mirror, Yata no Kagami, according to them, which stands for wisdom that comes from self-knowledge and self-management. You know, if you have a leader who has plenty of political power and plenty of resources, but this leader cannot manage himself, is not self-aware, that's a very dangerous leader. I am tempted to mention an example, but I will hold back myself. So let me ask you a question. You have the authority. You are a government executive. You are a CESO. You have the authority and the resources, or the command over resources. But do you have the mirror? Do you look at yourself? Are you aware of your assumptions, your feelings? We will dive deeper into that. So, in summary, the most important skill of a leader is self-awareness. Okay, let's go to the second discipline of a learning organization, according to Peter Singer. Let us say that somebody said something that appears insulting. You have 2 choices. You can get angry and say or do something because of that you may regret afterwards. Or you can be aware of your anger at the moment the anger emerges in you. You are self-aware. You're practicing the first domain of emotional intelligence. If you are aware that you are angry, you are conscious and you have the decision what to do based on that anger. For example, you can decide to study what triggered the statement, the insulting statement. You can decide to study that event and even go at the root cause. No? Here, you are managing or controlling anger. But in the first instance, anger is the one controlling you because it is an automatic reaction of the ego. You're not thinking, it's just an automatic reaction. No? So, it is not your decision. It is the anger controlling you. So, when you are aware, when you are self-aware on a moment-to-moment basis, you are given the power of choice. And when you implement that choice, an intelligent choice, an aware choice, you can institute change. First is change in yourself. Now, the second discipline, according to Peter Singer, is personal mastery. Okay, let's see another example of personal mastery. This guy, Aristotle, in Nicomachean Ethics, sabi niya, quote unquote, anyone can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not easy. Do you know this guy? Aristotle was the teacher of this guy. He's a great leader. Huh? If you said Alexander the Great, you're right. Alexander the Great, during his time, he conquered the known world. But before that, he was mentored by Aristotle on how to conquer the world within. So, based on the second discipline of Peter Singer, let us see. Suppose you assess yourself now in terms of self-mastery. You don't have to say it aloud. Just think to yourself. On a scale of 0 to 10, where are you in self-mastery? Does anger control you or you control anger? By the way, you can be angry, but it is a conscious decision to be angry because there is a purpose for the anger. But if you are angry because it's an automatic reaction of the ego, without even thinking about it, it was your ego who decided, it's not you. You're not in control. It's the ego control. It's the anger controlling you. So that's an example, a concrete example of personal mastery. Okay, let's go to the third, fourth, and fifth discipline. The third discipline, before I go to third discipline. In a VUCAD world, like what we have now in the pandemic, there is a fundamental choice that leaders need to make. You can be very reactive. No? Wait and see, predict what will happen, and then prepare and so on. You can be very, very passive and reactive, or you can be very proactive. You can look for opportunities and take advantage of opportunities during a crisis period. So, what do you do? Is that a choice or you do both? Okay. First, let us look at the situation. Prediction in a VUCAD environment is very error-prone. It's so difficult to predict. Also, prediction is very passive. You're just waiting. You're anticipating. You're not doing anything. No? It's a very academic exercise. Now, crisis is a mixture of risks and opportunities. You know, there is a Chinese character for crisis. And it has two ideograms. The first ideogram stands for risk. The other ideogram stands for opportunities. So the Chinese knows from their language that a crisis is not necessarily bad. It's both bad and good. Okay. So the best strategy, in my opinion, is you take rational precautions, which is why we have disaster risk reduction and disaster management. You take rational precautions, then focus more on capturing opportunities by innovation and proactive change. Because when the situation is very uncertain, like now it's pandemic, very unsettled, very uncertain, it's very ripe for change, very ripe for innovation. So let's go to the third discipline of Peter Singer. Team learning. Team learning is superior to individual learning for many reasons. No single person knows everything. But in a team, each member knows something the others don't know. And then the more diverse a team is, the more variety of knowledge and perspectives is available. So a team can think better and learn together, but if they are practicing the first and the second discipline. Huh? Okay. The fourth discipline is called shared vision. You know, a group with a shared vision is a very powerful thing, because the group can decide together and then act together in unison. They can co-create. In fact, a group inspired by a shared vision can create new social realities. And the best example are the early Christians. During the early centuries, the Pentecostal Christians during Pentecost, they are fired up by a vision, by a shared vision. And because of that, they created a movement that is global, and it has endured for over 2,000 years up to now. Okay, the fifth discipline, according to Peter Singer, is systems thinking. The cover of his book is letter V, the fifth discipline. The title is the fifth discipline. It's about this one, because this is the most important. Okay, actually, systems thinking has a very all-encompassing meaning, such as the purpose must be inclusivity. Everybody must be there. Walang etchapera. Walang exclusivity. Hindi pwedeng kami-kami lang. Kayo-kayo lang. No. Tayong lahat. Inclusivity. Walang iwanan. Interest should be planetary rather than national, or national rather than ethnic tribal. No? And when you are observing, look at the whole forest, hindi lang yung individual trees. Okay, when you analyze causality, hindi pwedeng nakatingin ka lang sa symptoms, yung effects. Look at the interconnections underlying the symptom. The connectivity, the interactions. Merong magandang saying yung mga NGOs, yung mga development NGOs, sabi nila, think globally and act locally. Malaki yung perspective, pero do what you can do within your small sphere of influence. No? Merong mga counter-local eh. They have a very narrow interest, and then they have their power is much bigger than what? Delikado. Okay. And look at the whole person. Because we are not just body. We are not just emotions. We are a totality, spirit, soul, mind, emotion, body. We are not just our ego mind. Although, if you will observe yourself constantly, you will notice that 90% of the time, ang umaandar yung ego mind. Yung soul spirit, bihira kumandar. You know, when you do random acts of kindness, yan, soul spirit yan. Pero 90%. Okay. This book is a very interesting book. Sabi nila, 1/3 of failed business decisions are driven by ego. 2/3 of executives never explore alternatives once they make up their mind. As if they're the only one in the world, no? 89% of managers, ang laki, 89%, push their decisions through by persuasion or edict and not by the value of their ideas. Para silang diktador. So, ego-driven decisions by leaders are very costly. Better they are not leaders, because if you are ego-driven and you put them in a high place, ang laki ng impact. Okay. William Isaacs, estudyante ito ni Peter Singh, graduate student, yung kanyang doctorate, ang kanyang advisor si Peter Singh. After his doctorate, he wrote a book. Anyway, he wrote a book about dialogue, combining all of this. Ito, yung kanyang libro. Now, to give you a very capsule idea of what is dialogue, according to William Isaacs, ito yun. It is not debate. It is group inquiry. Tapos, you must be aware of your premises. Yung first discipline, awareness of assumptions rather than unconscious premises. And then, suspend judgment. Don't always assume that you are right. Maybe you are, but suppose you are not. You will fight. You will invest your ego and you will fight to the death to defend your idea. No? See things in one way. Be willing to see things in other ways, in new ways of seeing. Separate pieces, complete jigsaw. In other words, when you are having a brainstorming, the members of the group have different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. Paano ngayon kung meron dong isang member na akala niya lahat ng jigsaw nasa kanya, so hindi niya kailangan yung ayan ang mga destructive thinking. Individual knowledge, group knowledge. Personal ownership, group ownership. Okay. I'm nearing the last few slides of my presentation. According to Peter Singh, the highest stage of dialogue is called generative dialogue. So according to him, there are 4 stages of dialogue. The first stage is false harmony. Dito, importante yung grupo pero walang learning. Ang nangyayari dito, kung sino pinakamaingay, kung sino may authority, sinong boss, siya susunod. So, it's called false harmony kasi yung iba na quiet, sige na nga, okay na sa akin, basta wag lang away. They want harmony rather than truth. No? And agreement is not really agreement. It is because of dictation by somebody who is higher in authority or has so-called more knowledge. Okay. Stage 2 is democratic debate. If the people are willing to respect the views of others, then they can go from 1 to 2. Number 2 is democratic debate. Everybody is heard. Everybody will listen to everybody's opinion, pero meron pa ding ego investment. Meron pa ding self-interest, my idea versus your idea. So, how do you settle the issue? So, majority rule. Okay, a trade-off. Okay, I will agree to this if you will agree to this, so trade-off. So, that is stage 2, democratic debate. Okay. Stage 3 is reflective egalitarianism. You can go from 2 to 3 if the members of the group have self-awareness. They're able to know their assumptions. they're able to compare each other's assumptions. And because of that, they're able to come up with win-win solutions. Everybody is a winner. Okay. The final fourth stage, ito yung generative dialogue. Sa generative dialogue, mas importante yung group idea kaysa sa individual idea. And they are learning from one another like this. But here, they are willing to let go of their individual idea and combine their individual ideas. So, parang dugtungan para makabuo ng mas maganda kaysa sa individual idea. It's a better group idea that will come out from the individual idea. Na hindi, it will not come out kung kanya-kanya. It will not come out if people are not willing to think outside their box. Because kanya-kanyang box eh. No? So dito, people are now thinking outside their favorite box. And so they're able to create something new. They're able to generate. Kaya, generative dialogue. This is how people or a group or a team can co-create effectively. So in summary, a leader must strive for better self-awareness and self-mastery. To change the world for the better, a leader must first learn to change himself. You cannot help people manage the pandemic if you cannot even manage it yourself. If you must be emotionally stable and emotionally mature in order to help your staff who are less emotionally stable or less emotionally mature. If you are rattled by the pandemic, how can you help people who are also rattled by the pandemic? Huh? So you have to be ahead of your people in terms of self-management, self-mastery. Okay. Instead of passively predicting or reacting to changes in the VUCA world, it is better for a leader to proactively initiate innovation and change. Because a VUCA environment is the right environment for making change. Because everybody is unsettled. No? People don't know what will happen. Well, if people don't know what will happen, you make it happen. But you have to be aware. You have to consult many people. Team learning. You cannot make decisions based on your own knowledge because you don't know everything. Finally, social transformation demands additional skills from a leader. And one of them is generative dialogues. And there are other skills. So with that, thank you for listening. And I hope we continue to keep in touch. Let me continue to share my screen because I have another, that's my last. So let us keep in touch. These are my emails. You can email me here. And I'm open for any question. But right now, we are ready for Q&A. So good day.